Good afternoon and welcome to We Believe Digital Studios and our twice a week We Believe Digital news break. Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 noon, 30-minute show. So glad to have you joining us. We do have a call-in number, 1-800-492-5186. And we got 89 degrees in Jackson, Mississippi right now, heading for 89 degrees. So could it possibly be that we're topped out? Wouldn't that be something? So been having a series of days here with just lots and lots of heat, and so grateful if we get a little break from that. So we got 18 different stories to share with you today. Some of them tiny and some of them a bit longer. So we'll start out on the global front. And Glenn, glad you're here in the We Believe Digital Studios. We want to try to bring you good content and value for the time, and we want to be your source, on demand, news, entertainment, community dialogue. We want to be your go-to source. We Believe Studios. We Believe Digital Studios. So the Ukraine's President Zelensky says he warns of possible Russian sabotage at this nuclear power plant. He made the alarming claim in his nightly video address, adding that he believes the Russians may soon damage the, Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and blame Ukraine after they do it. So a lot of people keeping an eye on that. That's of great concern. There's been shelling in that area, rockets being launched in very close proximity to this nuclear power plant. So that's a lead-off concern there. Second one, also related to nuclear power, the International Atomic Energy Agency has approved a plan. You got to track along now on this one. Has approved a plan by Japan to release more than 1 million tons of treated nuclear waste from the destroyed Fukushima power plant into the ocean. So they say that this nuclear waste has been treated, and They've approved this plan despite vehement international opposition. The water, which was used to cool the fuel rods of the plant in 2011 when they had that catastrophe, following the meltdown of 3 of its reactors, will be treated and released into the Pacific Ocean over the next 30 to 40 years. So the material has been treated, and it will be released and spread out over 30 to 40 years. But that's more than 1 million tons of nuclear waste heading to the ocean eventually over time, incrementally. The disaster was caused by the tsunami waves triggered by a magnitude 9.0 earthquake. Man, oh man. The Kremlin on Tuesday, I got another name here I'm going to struggle to pronounce, but the Kremlin on Tuesday held the door open for contacts with the U.S. regarding a possible prisoner exchange that could potentially involve the jailed Wall Street journalist. Now, this guy, Evan Gershkovich, has been jailed in Russia since March. So here we are, July. He's a reporter with the Wall Street Journal. But they reaffirmed that such talks must be held out of the public eye. So they say publicly that they could be open to talks, but then they say at the same time we need to not talk about it in public. The United Nations International Organization for Migration updated the number of migrants who have died trying to reach Europe by sea this year. The number is nearly 2,000 people. So nearly 2,000 people have died trying to get from different places, some from West Africa, And one enormous tragedy accounts for a large portion of the uptick, and that's that capsized boat that we told you about a while back on this show, capsizing fishing boat Adriana 2 weeks ago in deep waters off the coast of Greece. The boat had departed Libya, crammed with hundreds of people. When it capsized, it took the lives of most of the migrants on board. They estimate the number who perished to be, just from that one single incident, to be 596 people. So, very sad to see the loss and everything. Almost 2,000 people this year. And it sure does tell you about other parts of the world where people are willing to risk their lives to leave those areas and go to areas that they feel like, would be safer for them, more prosperous for them. They have a chance to lead a better life. Moving down to the national news, the White House was briefly evacuated Sunday evening while President Biden was at Camp David after the Secret Service discovered suspicious powder in a common area of the West Wing. And preliminary tests showed the substance was, wait for it, cocaine. So this is in an area where it is open to the public, tours go through there and so forth. So you never know. You never know how it got there, but that's what the preliminary results show. Number of people dying in the U.S. from pregnancy-related causes has more than doubled in the last 20 years. Let's think that through for a second. So in the most advanced nation on earth, the most lucrative nation on earth, where we have all these advances, all these things going on that contribute to health and life expectancy and so forth, but pregnancy-related deaths across the board in the U.S. doubling in the last 20 years. That's according to a new study published in the Journal of American Medical Association. While the study found mortality rates remained unacceptably high among all racial and ethnic groups across the U.S., the worst outcomes were, and I know you can finish this sentence already, We Believe digital listeners know all about this. The worst outcomes were among Black women, Native women, and Alaskan Native women. And that is exacerbated in populations that have been historically underserved and for whom structural racism affects them greatly. And that's a quote from Dr. Allison Bryant at Massachusetts General Hospital. Sticking with women for a minute here, in May, the share of working age women between 25 and 54 who are working or looking for work hit 77.6%, an all-time high. Among African American women in that age range, more than 80% are in the workforce. That's a big turnaround from the early days of the pandemic, when millions of women lost jobs as restaurants and other in-person businesses were shuttered and many more dropped out of the job market to look after children or ailing family members. Lots and lots of people back to work, unemployment down. One of the statements you hear frequently is, if you want to work, you can work. The jobs are certainly available. Got a big chunk of information to share with you about shootings over the 4th of July weekend. It's really, really sad. Some ungodly number of places. We'll start in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 5 killed and 2 injured. Police say a man with a semi-automatic rifle, a handgun, body armor, and a police scanner opened fired and continued to shooting as officers pursued him. The 5 dead are Lasheed Merritt, 20 years old, Demir Stanton, 29, Ralph Morales, 59, DeJuan Brown, 15 years old, and Joseph Wama Jr., 31 years old. They had all been shot multiple times. The 2 people that were injured in Philadelphia in that shooting were 2 boys between the ages of 2 and 13. Also, shift from Philadelphia to Chicago. Chicago suburb of Highland Park, 7 people killed, 47 others injured. 7 killed and 47 injured when a gunman opened fire from a rooftop onto parade festivities on Monday morning. A person of interest was apprehended several hours later. Highland Park, Chicago. In New York City, 13 shot and 3 killed. Gary, Indiana, 7 wounded, 3 killed. Kansas City over the weekend, 6 wounded, 2 killed. Richmond, Virginia, 6 people shot, no fatalities. A place called Haltom, Haltom, Haltom City, Texas, 3 law enforcement officers and 1 civilian shot. Kenosha, Wisconsin, 4 wounded and 1 killed. Indianapolis, an 8 and a 10-year-old, I just don't even want to tell you this, an 8 and a 10-year-old inside a bounce house were shot. And they say this is deliberate. There was no accident involved. It wasn't a mishap. It was deliberate. In Minneapolis, 8 wounded and 2 officers, 8 wounded at one event, and then at 2 officers at a separate shooting. Sacramento, California, 4 wounded and 1 killed. All of these at 4th of July events, most official events, some unofficial events. Horrendous what we got going on with the guns, you know. And the gatherings of people, I guess it just come into people's mind. They gotta try and get as many as they can. So we got to start thinking twice about these gatherings until we get some type of gun control reform. We got to think twice about all this. How we're going to approach this, how we're going to keep ourselves safe and keep our families safe. So just before we get ready to dip out at the halfway mark, remind you that here in Mississippi, you know, we got a lot of things going on, but one of the things we got going on is this TANF scandal. The estimates vary. The lowest one I see reported consistently now is $77 million. I've also heard the number go up to $94 million. So this money was pilfered from a TANF fund, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. So this is a federal government-funded safety net. And Republican leaders in Mississippi and their appointees pilfered tens and tens of millions of dollars provided to us by the federal government to help the neediest folks in our state. And believe me, we have many. A solid 20% of the population of Mississippi lives below the poverty line. And once you're here for a while and see the way things are, you just know that that's undercounted. You just know that that's not a reliable number. 20% of a state living below the poverty line, I believe it's higher than that. And certainly in places like Jackson, it's much higher than that. So anyway, but these Republican legislators in this Republican-led state will not hold won't hold any hearings. Don't you think they would want to get to the bottom of this and find out and reform that system so that something like this could never, ever happen again. But no, they're just letting the legal thing play out and keeping their heads down so they can try and remain in office. But I don't know. The Democrats have held 2 hearings on this so far. Republicans have not held any. And We Believe Digital, we just feel it's important to tell you that every single time we come on the air with a news program or a public interest program, so you know that information. So we'll step off now for just a bit for a couple commercials, then we'll be right back with you with some more news from Mississippi and then Jackson Hinds County.
Looking for the hottest content in the city of Jackson and surrounding areas? Check out WeBelieveDigital.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We Believe Digital Podcast is here for all your podcasting needs.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 613-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippilink.com and click on Home Delivery.
And welcome back to We Believe Digital Studios in Jackson, or on our news break show. We have several more stories to share with you. We're down to the stories that are affecting the entire state of Mississippi. I think we shared this with you before, but it was certainly confirmed over the weekend that, part of that Senate Bill 2343 it expanded the Capitol Police jurisdiction. So we just want to tell you that. I confirmed it over the weekend through the Capitol Police, spoke to 2 different officers. So just be aware that anywhere in Jackson from this point forward, Capitol Police has concurrent jurisdiction with Jackson Police Department. Poof, just like that, one fell swoop. And concurrent jurisdiction, so I guess that means they get to iron it out among themselves when something comes up, when something pops off. But those 2 officers did also share with me that even though that law is now in effect and they can patrol the entire city, they don't really have the resources to do that now. They don't have enough staffing. And so, they're hiring officers left and right, but we just want to make you aware of that. Also, the Supreme Court on Friday rejected a challenge to a constitutional amendment adopted by the state of Mississippi during the racist Jim Crow era, aimed at preventing black people from voting. So, by rejecting the challenge, they're basically saying, we don't want to hear this, we don't want to rule on this. The justices left in place a law barring certain felons from voting, which the state says is no longer tainted by the racist. He can't even keep a straight face on some of this stuff. That Mississippi is no longer tainted by the racist intentions of its original authors because it has subsequently been updated on 2 occasions. Well, sad. But also a piece of truth is that a lot of people vying for office in this state, they don't want to see this change. They don't want to see felons have rights restored. They're perfectly okay with them. I guess they sleep well at night knowing that somebody was found guilty for a crime, did their time, is released, but don't get their rights back. Apparently they're okay with that, and they sleep like a baby. The court's decision not to hear the case prompted a sharp dissenting opinion from Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, joined by fellow Justice Sonia Sotomayor. So there's people out there fighting for us, trying to do the right thing. Wish there were more of them. Very outnumbered in this stacked. Some people call it the MAGA court. I don't know if that's fair, but certainly a predominantly Republican court, or conservative court, I should say. And Justice Elena Kagan, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, just doing the best they can. Of course, they're all off for 2 months of vacation now. They don't get back to hearing cases till the month of October. How about that? Or is that 3 months? Yeah, somewhere between 2 and 3 months vacation. How about that? So the next story in Mississippi affects the Democratic Party. You know, a big controversy last week with regard to emails that were released, printed by Mississippi Today, where the chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Party, a retired judge, Tyree Irving, had really spoke very harshly of the executive director of the Mississippi Democratic Party, a man who's much younger than him, and so anyway. But the bottom line is, the result is that Tyree Irving resigned over the weekend, as dozens of state party executive committee members appeared poised to remove him from his seat in a July 6th emergency meeting. That, according to Mississippi Today. So emergency meeting of the Mississippi Democratic Party tomorrow. Don't know where and when, but Tyree Irving has resigned. I met with him one time. It was very informative, but I certainly wish it could have been more of a positive meeting. Another story that I don't think we got to last Friday. U.S. Supreme Court rejected President Joe Biden's plan for student debt relief that would have forgiven between $10,000 and $20,000 in student loan debt for millions across the country, and that includes 439,000 Mississippians. So no chance for that right now. The president said he's working on some other options. He's not happy with that decision by the courts, by the Supreme Court, and so we'll keep an eye on that. Big push during this most recent legislative funding to fully fund public schools. It's just not this every legislative session. So they have a funding formula. They don't fulfill their own funding formula, and so they ultimately received $1 million, which is $100 million, which is far short of the overall funding formula for regular school funding. But in the months since the legislature adjourned, there's been confusion regarding how to calculate enrollment, leading to questions for superintendents as they make their budgets for the upcoming year. So I thought I spoke that in error, but so there is a normal school funding scheme, a formula. They didn't use that formula. They used something else instead. They just threw a block of money, but that block of money was far less than what the formula would have yielded, the one that the legislators themselves came up with. So I just want to make sure I was very clear on that. So you have all this money that's been provided by the legislature, but superintendents are confused about how to make the calculations of enrollment, and consequently that's affecting how they're going to go about their budgets for the next year. Not very good when you, even when you partially fund programs, but you don't make the mechanism clear that how people need to go about accessing those funds. Just got a few stories here for you in Jackson and Hinds County. Interim JPD Chief Wade spoke to JTV over the weekend about tackling crime. And he shared a lot of information, and there was a few quotes there that I wanted to, again, this comes from WJTV, wanted to share with you. And he was really saying that tackling crime is simply by being part of the community, making sure that our police officers understand what the mission is, making sure that we're adhering to our policies, our procedures as we move forward. Dealing with law enforcement issues not only in the city of Jackson, but the entire metro area. It's important to know that what we police, we have to take a lot of things that took us to consideration, empathy, sympathy, compassion. We cannot violate people's rights. He said crime prevention starts at home. Wade encouraged the youth to get introduced to different avenues and positive outlets. So that's what the interim chief had to say about tackling crime. Kind of sound like, in an overview, like everybody needs to do their part, from the police department to the citizens, parents, youth. Everybody needs to do their part. Try to work together, come together on this and work to reduce the crime. Positive message, I suppose. Nothing unique or exciting, but just got to get to it. Next story has to do with a water main break on Woodrow Wilson. This kind of, an hour ago, I drove through a water main break on Woodrow Wilson. They say it affected business over the weekend. We don't have any water right now, so we can't sell any drinks or slushies. The only thing we can sell are shakes and burgers and fries. That's about it right now. Haven't heard any customer complain about it, but I know later on they probably would, said Linda Slaughter, the regional general manager for Rallies. Jackson leaders told WJTV News that the water leak was repaired by Tuesday afternoon. Well, I guess they got another one here, because I just drove through one at Bailey and Woodrow Wilson an hour ago. Mississippi Chief Justice Michael Randolph, probably heard him talked a lot about lately. Well, he has recused himself from an appeal in a lawsuit challenging House Bill 1020. The NAACP brought a lawsuit challenging HB 1020. A part of that HB 1020 would have had this Chief Justice Michael Randolph appointing 4 different judges for our county to operate these CCID cases. Well, he has recused himself from that. So I guess that means if that were to go forward, if he's recusing himself, that means that the other judges would have to make the call on that. So there's probably more to that than meets the eye. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. He issued the recusal order on Monday. The Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court recusing himself. Think that one through. And the last story on the local front we have for you is Ward 6 Councilman Aaron Banks, unanimously elected president during a special meeting on this past on Monday. Ward 2 Councilman Angelique Lee was reelected vice president. There was a lot of talk on different news shows about different votes being taken. Apparently, Vern Hartley was in consideration, but ultimately that didn't fly. Couldn't get the votes. Now, Aaron Banks was the president of the council 2 years ago. So he's the president of the council again. I know Mr. Banks, we all remember, was the one that broke the deadlock with the trash contract back in April, right? Now they were, no trash was being picked, trash being piled up in the streets of Jackson for a little over 2 weeks, remember? Because they didn't want to have the black contractor that the mayor wanted to have. They didn't want to have a black contractor picking up the trash. There was a block of council people: Mr. Banks, Mr. Hartley, Mr. Stokes, and then of course Ashby Foote, the outgoing president. They wanted to have waste management. I mean, it was very, very clear, and there had to be reasons for that. Because Richards had been here for a year. They've been doing the job. Yeah, they got a rocky start, but they were doing the job, and they were doing it for less money than we would have been paying waste management. And so, but it was Aaron Banks that broke that deadlock. But he kept the deadlock alive. He was part of keeping that deadlock alive for, I don't know, 18 months or so. Ended up costing the city, minimum $400,000. I bet we'll find out in the end, $500,000 in legal expenses, and trash piled up for over 2 weeks. So he was part of that, making that happen. But then in the end, he buckled, or he saw the light. I don't know. I heard a saying a long time ago. I think it's true. Most people don't change because they see the light, but they change because they feel the heat. And Aaron Banks changed his vote. Richards got the contract. Trash started getting picked up. Within 2 weeks after that, everything was back on schedule and doing fine. And you never hear any complaints about trash pickup. So anyway, he's back holding the gavel at our city council. Councilman Aaron Banks. We wish him the best. We don't forget things that happened in the past, but certainly wish him the best in the future. So we're out of time for today. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us in the chat, Miss Henry. Always glad to see you. And stay safe out there, everybody. Take good care of yourselves and take care of one another. And we're going to do our best to be right back here with you Friday at 12 noon with a whole bunch of new stories to share with you.